Okay, hopefully, does it say it's recording? Do you guys see that at all?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All
Yeah,
right.
thanks,
so,
Alex.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I appreciate you guys hopping on. I know it's kind of a last minute getting that invite out, but we got Will Adrian here from Maricopa County talking about emission reduction credits. And he's going to give us the lowdown. We've been working on this development of this rule, or these couple rules that are around it for what, 5 years now or something, Will?
Yeah.
So with that, I will let you start giving your spiel. And if at any point anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in. And yeah, appreciate you doing this, Will.
Absolutely.
Will, this is Mark Stoddard. I'm Alex's co-partner in the Technical Subcommittee. How would you prefer questions? You want them to be raised at the time, or you want them to wait till the end, and do you want them to be posted in the chat?
Whatever works for everyone. I would say feel free to put questions out as soon as they come to you. We can, I can stop and address them as they come in. That way we don't have to go through the slides and jump around. Yeah.
Thank you, Will.
Absolutely. Yeah, whatever works for everyone. I'll try to watch the chat as well. So go ahead and jump in. My name is Will Adrian. I'm a senior planner with Maricopa County Air Quality Department. I'm joined by Greg Verkamp. I'll let him introduce himself here.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Verkamp. I'm the planning supervisor. I supervise 3 senior planners, including Will. I've been working with Will on developing our ERC program for many years now. Thanks.
Yes, quite a while. So we've been working to update and revise our ERC rules. Today I'll go over rules 203, 204, and 205, and we'll look at how the program's been expanded, how credits are generated, how those credits are used to satisfy NSR requirements. Yes, let's jump in. So I've gone to the second slide. I just want to make sure. Can everyone see the second, our mission?
I don't think the slides are showing there.
I have not shared yet. So maybe.
There you go.
How about that? Okay. Thank you. So we'd like to begin our outreach opportunities with the department's mission, which is to improve the air quality of Maricopa County so customers, residents, and visitors can live, work, and play in a healthy environment. Some of our pollution awareness campaigns include fireplace retrofit, idle-free, and the mowing down pollution. Before discussing the rules themselves, it's good to understand the regulatory and air quality context that led to their development and kind of give some insight into why we did what we did. So we'll do a quick background on some things that led to the development of the rules and why we chose the direction that we chose to go. It's an evolved response to ozone planning requirements and federal permitting obligations and a growing shortage of ERCs. So Maricopa County is currently in moderate non-attainment for the 2015 8-hour ozone standard. We've been working to address non-attainment requirements, specifically, the emission offset requirements for quite some time. We have had some recent events with non-attainment. Recently effective April 22nd, we were found to have attained the standard, but for the contribution of international emissions under Section 179B. Nonetheless, we remain classified as moderate, and major sources continue to be required to provide the offsets for significant increases in emissions. And with the continued need for offsets, the department has worked to develop these ERC rules that are hopefully going to allow for the generation of more credits to be able to be used for offsets. So we're currently in a situation where the majority of ERCs have been used in major source permitting actions. That's kind of where we're at. Traditional ways of creating ERCs, facility shutdown, adding control, are now much harder to find. I mean, people are constantly reviewing shutdown reports and looking to find additional traditional sources of ERCs. So this has led Maricopa County to seek an alternative source of ERCs that can be used as offsets so that major sources can still have the ability to provide offsets to comply with the Clean Air Act. And ultimately, economic development and growth is not impeded. So we have these federal requirements, but then we also have the surrounding area and the community, which we're trying to comply and satisfy and work with both. So now we turn to that's interesting. The chart does not have the values. I guess the main thing for this is basically our 2023 periodic emissions inventory, and this is a cumulative view, and so you can see the sources that we regulate are approximately the point sources, the stationary sources are about 23%. So for the NOx emissions, we want to be able to allow for credits to be generated, for reductions to be able to be implemented, but traditional only has this certain small portion of the chart. This is on-road and non-road. These two, the blue and the orange. So a significant, almost 3/4 of the NOx 2023 emissions are non-road and on-road, and that's this is the where helped guide us to what we were to look at mobile sources, and so explore generating credits from that. As I'm sure most are aware, the challenge is not simply finding emission reductions, but creating viable ERCs from mobile sources that meet the federal requirements. We have people call in periodically because there is a dollar amount associated with these reductions. Can I get a credit from this, from that? They have to satisfy certain requirements, going back to the offset criteria. And additionally, as I'm sure most are aware, although there are existing mobile source ERC rules, so we're definitely not the first to explore this. Overall, however, there still hasn't been a large amount of mobile ERC credits issued. So that's kind of the issue that we ran into, is there's nothing that's really currently viable that we've seen available out there. So as we started to explore, we have this increasing ERC shortage. We want to provide for more reductions for like NOx and VOC outside of the stationary source. So we look at the mobile sources, and we realize we're probably going to have to do some of the work. Might have to be a little creative and do some of the work on our own. So Maricopa County therefore worked closely with EPA, and this can't be emphasized enough. It was regular periodic meetings discussing the offset integrity, because it ultimately has to comply with that, and many discussions on how the rules can be implemented, and what goes in monitoring, reporting, record keeping, and then at the same time also with stakeholders, because as we've seen, there are mobile source rules available, but most are not utilized that often. And so we wanted to work with the stakeholders to ensure that people actually use the rule. So it was lots of outreach and discussion. So to address the shortage, we reorganized the ERC program. So Rule 203 now consolidates administrative requirements into one rule, and 204 and 205 have the mobile rules. Originally 204 was kind of the banking administrative rule, and so but then it also had some non-traditional requirements. So we kept the non-traditional requirements of 204 and updated 204, and then used 203 as created 203 for the administrative role. The next few slides summarize some major milestones that led to the development of the program. So we, as I kind of mentioned, 204 was originally kind of the general ERC rule, and it was for traditional sources. That was back in 2003. 2017, we began to realize there's an ERC shortage, and we're going to have to explore non-traditional, non-permitted sources. And so House Bill 2152 allowed for that, and subsequently in 2018, the department revised 204 to incorporate requirements for non-traditional sources. And so major sources are being creative. They're looking for, because they want to expand. And so Intel incorporated waste management mobile source credits into their permitting action. And this was significant. This was one of the first mobile source credit generations within Maricopa County. It really provided the framework for the generation of mobile sources and provide kind of a foundation and a possible route in 2023. So then we have the waste management Intel project, and then in 2023 we've been developing Rule 205, and so that got adopted, the first version. And so then in 2024, EPA approved the ERC permit conditions for waste management. Waste management basically replaced 225 CNG refuse trucks, replaced the diesel with CNG trucks, and they took that reduction and used that as a credit. It's a separate project from 205, but the requirements in 205 were kind of based on that project, the permit conditions that went into the SIP for waste management. So revisions were adopted in 2025 too, because as we developed 205, we're working with the EPA, we're working with stakeholders to really implement an approvable rule. And so 2025, we adopt some revisions addressing EPA comments, addressing enforceability, and improving incentive for people to actually want to use the rule. And 204 and 205 are close together. They incorporate, as you'll see in the presentation, similar requirements, and so that we worked closely on both those, and a lot of the elements are transferable between both those rules. We recently passed House Bill 2428 in the milestone events. This is one of the most recent ones, and this bill allows for counties to be able to issue upon a voluntary request, issue an ERC basically an ERC permit to be able to obtain those requirements to satisfy the offset criteria. So now we'll look at Rule 203. And for Rule 203, our administrative rule, there's kind of three, well, there's kind of this flow. So you have the generation of the reductions, and we're going to evaluate. We designed our requirements to where they can incorporate an enforceable date in like their permit, so they can apply for a credit and then replace the engine or add a control later on. The credit can't be used until they've actually performed or completed the project. So that's why it's kind of these are kind of together. It's not necessarily that they would do the reduction and then we might evaluate and then they do the reduction. They'll get a certificate and the bank is optional. Sometimes the credit's generated and the user's already been speaking with the generator, and so there's no need for it to go into the bank. The one who's they may have already provided funds for the generation, which I think is ideal. You want to facilitate transactions as easily as possible. And then lastly, the user will submit the credits for use. So the rule applies to three main parties. We have the traditional generator, which is the stationary source. This is the typical ERC generator you think of. Then we have a regulatory generator, which is mentioned within the rule. And for our rules is going to be for someone who generated a credit in compliance with 204 or 205. So slightly different from a traditional generator. And then we have the credit user within the rule as well. And 203 is structured into 5 main sections, which is typical for most of our rules. It's got general provisions, applicability, purpose, definitions, and then it has the administrative requirements, certification, banking, offset use, and some implementation requirements as well. And here's a few terms. There's more definitions, but some noteworthy ones. ERC is a certified emission reduction. It's been certified by the department. Baseline emissions are based on sources actual emissions. This is one that's always pointed out because they may have a permit which has a potential emissions, but generators have to keep in mind that they're only going to be issued credit for the actual emissions, and there's a certain time to that they'll determine their baseline emissions from, and that's the city here with the calendar years. And then qualifying emissions is another important one because that determines what you can actually get certified. So here's the offset integrity criteria. These are what the credits have to comply with. These are central to federal approval. Federal approval is going to require us to demonstrate that we fulfill all of these, and traditional credits could be are slightly different in some respects than the non-traditional credits for fulfilling these. And it's just they're different sources, and even within the traditional credits, different traditional sources may have slightly different interpretations of complying with this. So every application, every review ultimately focuses on demonstrating that these are fulfilled. And so for a traditional generator, which is outlined in 203, the path is pretty straightforward. In practice, definitely not always, but it's pretty simply spelled out. So they revise or they close out their permit to create the reduction, submit an ERC application. The department does this review and then will issue the credit. You can see here we make a note. This is pretty important. The reductions do have to be implemented before the user goes to actually operate, and that goes back to the Clean Air Act. And so here's our here's a quick overview of the application. The application requires detailed information because it's kind of our justification for certifying. They're going to provide identity, demonstrate the calculations, and how they meet, specifically say how they meet the integrity criteria. And then we do have a responsible official signature just to help ensure truthfulness and accuracy of their application. And the credits are used at a ratio of 1 ERC for each qualifying ton per year of emission reduction. The certificate documents an approved quantity and serves as the basis for future use or registration. And again, we kind of pointed they can't be used until the user is going to or the generator has actually implemented the project. We mentioned the bank. It's in the rule, but it's voluntary, and it's meant for to be viewed in transparency and for users to find available credits. However, they typically move pretty quickly and aren't always going to be deposited in the bank, but it's there for people to use if they like. And then finally, Rule 203 outlines administrative requirements, notifications, fees, which 204 and 205 reference back to, and there's some record keeping to ensure for the traditional source integrity is maintained. So now we'll go from our administrative rule to Rule 204, and 204 specifically focuses on non-road engines. So we refer to these as NERCs, non-road engine, emission reduction credits, and eligible products are typically going to be replacing an older engine with a cleaner one. Typically going to be that. You can also comply by retrofitting. And similar to 203, 204 has an applicability, definitions, and all the standard components of our rules. And the definition is pretty broad, and so you have a couple of pictures here, but really 204 is intended to apply to all types of non-road engines that would want to and could apply for credit. So we have the same criteria, a little bit, I think as I was mentioning, a little bit different for non-road engines. There's a time frame of 20 years for permanency. Definition of actual surplus. Federal enforceability involves the rule being approved into our SIP. And here's a NERC, information for a NERC application. It's going to be similar to 203's application. You have the inventory, the project description, how you quantified it, but you have a quantification section in 204. So you have to provide in the quantification, it states requires the horsepower and hours of operations. You have to provide those in your application and use those to quantify. And so if you were to apply under 204, it'll go for review by the control officer. There is public participation for 204. We were able to, all projects less than 25 tons or more of emission reduction credits don't require public participation, but anything over that does require that prior to issuing the certificate. And then ultimately you get the permit conditions revised or issued, and the certificate. And the certificate's going to have this information listed here. The horsepower, it'll state that on the certificate, the emission factor, horsepower. And here's a more detailed description of what's on the certificate. It's essentially, you should be able to look at the certificate and verify credits issued. So it is intended to have all that information available. So now we'll turn to the requirements that for generating NERCs. So what do the generators have to do to qualify? Projects have to occur within the non-attainment area, or they have to at least operate in order to generate. The credit they generate is going to have to be within the non-attainment area and follow approved quantification procedures. It states location, the engine has to be based and operated. Our base of allows for different variations. So you really have to pay attention to the definition to help determine how you might comply for that. Engines have to have a non-resettable hour meter installed, and they also have to maintain location records to help establish the operation within the non-attainment area so that we can say they're valid emission reductions. There are exemptions within the rule, like if you replace all of your equipment, or if you're only operating at one location, there's some new exemptions you might fall under to help lessen the stringency of the monitoring. But if you're going inside and out of the non-attainment area, then there's those monitoring requirements. And then to ensure permanency of the reduction, that the original engine is not going to be operating, it does have to be removed from the non-attainment area or permanently disposed or disabled. And then in the event the replaced engine subsequently replaced, we have a requirement to maintain a certain emission factor for the permanency, and that allows some flexibility in case something happens to the replacement engine. And so for the credit user, one of the most important things is that it's here that implementation has to be used, and that the generator has to notify both the control officer and the user, so the user will be notified when their reductions have been implemented if they didn't already do them previously. And then lastly for NERCs, here's the an overview of the calculation portion. Essentially, it'll come down to hours of operation times the horsepower times the pollutant emission factor, and we have a hierarchy for the emission factor because it's going to vary what people will be able to provide or would like to provide, and it'll be the baseline minus the post-project emissions to determine what the reduction is. And so that's 204. 204 was our non-road, 205 is our on-road. It's going to be pretty similar, just having to do with fleet vehicles. So it's intended, because you can't necessarily get, no pun intended, a ton of credit from like one vehicle, but from a fleet, there's opportunity for a significant amount of reductions. So it's for a fleet of vehicles that has basically the same components, the situation source permit, which helps for enforceability, certificate and user. It also has the criteria, a little bit specific to a little different, like the emission factor is going to be a MOVES emission factor. It's going to be based on vehicle miles traveled instead of hours of operation. But it also has a similar time frame to establish permanency. Similar things for when someone applies. We have the identity, providing inventory of what they're going to do, showing us how they calculated, and detailing how they're going to replace or remove or dispose of the original vehicle. And the certification path is going to be pretty similar. So they'll apply, we review, public participation on all MERC projects, and then issuing a certificate with this information here. And again, the certificate has the basically information to be able to, so an outside party can verify that reductions are actually being generated as they were applied for and intended to be. So we have this general information, VMT quantity, which the calculation was based on, the emission factors that were used, and when the vehicle replacement should have happened, so people can verify that it was actually done. And requirements are going to be pretty similar as 204. The fleet vehicles have to be based and operated within the non-attainment area. The reductions are only for when they're operating in the non-attainment area. Similar calculation or quantification, just using MOVE's emission factor instead of 204, instead of in 204. And again, tracking, so they'll have to track their VMT inside the non-attainment area, and have some location system tracking. However, if they're only operating at one or always within the non-attainment area, then there are exemptions they may to reduce the tracking. So they're taking their VMT monthly, ensuring that they're still operating as they applied for. With the removal, slightly different. The original vehicle has to go 200 miles from the non-attainment area, or they can permanently dispose of it, and also can't be relocated to another ozone non-attainment area. It's a little bit more stringent. And then the credit user, very similar as well. After implementation by the generator, and then just ensuring that they didn't replace the vehicle and then are not using it and shifting the operations to a higher emitting vehicle, which would result in a shortfall. And here's the calculations for MERCs, very similar baseline, my supposed project. It's just gonna be vehicle miles traveled, that historic, what they applied with, multiplied by the emission factor. So that's our overview of our updated revised ERC program. We can open it up to questions if anyone has any.
Well, Will, I appreciate it. I don't think there's any questions. I think the silence maybe is just
It's quite a
speaks
bit
to how complex the ERCs are.
there's a lot there. Yeah.
do you, I guess in your experience, have you, the places generating these credits, are they predominantly small businesses? Are they medium? Are they large businesses? Kind of how would what's the typical credit generator look like?
I think there are small businesses, but I think those typically are going to be like traditional shutdown. I think from what I've seen, they wouldn't necessarily have like a large enough on-road or non-road fleet to be able to generate significant credit, but definitely those come up more typically under the traditional, they're closing out, or maybe they have like an engine or some other source that they can add a control.
Gotcha, that makes sense. So
Yep.
I guess, would you say, what are some of the major businesses that you see trying to capture these or trying to use these credits? Like aside from the bigger players like TSMC or Intel, you know, the big boys that we know we're always dealing with, but are there any other like data centers or anything else that are trying to take advantage of these credits?
In terms of generating, I think it's any like I think the consultants are scouring and looking for anything that's available, so they don't necessarily discriminate. I think if you have a source that could potentially apply a control or be replaced, it's going to be explored for potential credits. And then definitely the larger businesses, I would think they would want to be tracking ERCs and be aware of what's available, because they're not going to know, like they may need them for some emissions increase at some point. And it's a tough game to get into later.
I think power plants probably be another big category, not necessarily currently, but could be as power is needed more and more, and those expansion of those plants probably being looked at too.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
And I guess in terms of usability of these credits, you guys see if our non-attainment status changes to, let's say we go to Sirius, is that where these credits are this is kind of future proofing in a way to see down the road and see, when our permit thresholds for Title V's go down, there's going to be a lot more people that need credits to make changes and to start new businesses and stuff like that. Is that kind of where you guys are going with this regulation? Trying to future proof it?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to get a bit availability period, right? Even for currently, it would be both, in my opinion. Currently we have a shortage, and currently there's a need, as you've already mentioned. Some of the bigger semiconductors are looking currently, but yeah, it's absolutely something for, if we were ever to be reclassified to Sirius and have more need for them, it's the opportunity for them to be generated more, right? Provide passive generation.
So I guess what I was getting at is you guys don't see the need for these going down anytime soon. It's only going to go up as time goes on, ideally.
Constant or increase, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate the information, and I don't know if anybody has anything that comes to their mind in their jurisdictions currently, but I thought that your presentation would be potentially helpful in helping other jurisdictions come up with plans on how to allow new businesses to come in without adversely affecting the air quality and without exceeding their NACs, the NACs. And yeah, I guess I just thought it was a great program that allows some flexibility, and I thought other jurisdictions might be able to benefit some from it.
This is Mark Stoddard with Indiana, and I was curious if there was a reduction taken in an adjacent state, whether an entity in Arizona could take advantage of that potential credit that originates from an adjacent state?
I think that's if I'm not mistaken, it's like interpollutant, which is
Ozone transport, maybe?
converting. But I think that's referring to like like within the area, and we haven't currently explored that, implementing that. I think in certain cases where like the area is very close and potentially the emissions, like maybe not necessarily within that non-attainment area, but are located like adjacent to it, if they're contributing, then you can make the case that a reduction there is going to eventually help that non-attainment area.
Yeah, I was thinking in terms like ozone transport. And in my area, up in Chicago, you have Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. And there's a lot of traffic. And sometimes certain states blame other states for the cause of their excess NOx emissions. And so I don't know in your case whether blame could be laid on California, Nevada, New Mexico, was it Utah, as far as excess NOx emissions traveling to your state?
I briefly reviewed this, and I believe there's an like a permit that allows for the use of credits generated from like a different area. But in that case, I believe, and I looked at it briefly, and it's not super fresh in my mind, but I think it was because it was located in close proximity. Yeah, it was a reduction there would help, and so it was those were able to be used as credits. It's definitely it's something to explore.
Yeah, especially as the population centers get bigger. And I don't know what the transportation hub is like in, what is it, Phoenix? Is where you are? I can only imagine that the population center is getting larger. And so it will mean more emissions from road or traffic or non-stationary sources.
Yeah, I think at the moment we have a significant source of non-road and on-road emissions to potentially generate credits from. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Do you know if that will trickle down to, say, like a person is thinking about buying an electric vehicle, and whether in order to induce more people to do so, to have credits for the purchase of those electric vehicles, to be able to offset the run-of-the-mill vehicles that you might find one or two people using, or maybe the high occupancy lanes to encourage more carpooling in order to reduce the number of vehicles on the road?
I think it could definitely impact a decision, like a future decision to purchase vehicles. But not only that, but we speak about being able to like sell, saying I'm going to do this or I'm going to replace, and then being able to sell that certificate. But it's definitely also applicable to historical, for us based on our base year inventory after 2017. So it could have been, you could have replaced vehicles previously and then apply later for credit. So it's also retroactive.
Thank you very much, Will, for your presentation. It was definitely informative. I kind of got lost several times there, but I hope that some of the others participating may be either addressing the same issues you are, or are looking to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, we just would like to get the word out so that it does potentially, if it could, provide some assistance to anyone else. I was just going to quickly point out, we do have we recently submitted a revised 205 we went back and addressed some comments and adjusted or modified the calculation. And that's public comment is closed, but if you there's the rulemaking docs are available here at this Federal Register address for recent action that we have out. And then I'll put up, don't hesitate to reach out to Greg or myself. Here's our contact information.
Yeah, this took years
Yeah.
to develop. So understanding that people aren't going to capture everything the first time through. We're talking about rural development that took many years, many workshops, yeah, stakeholders, for almost a year, weekly meetings with the EPA, just to make sure that we're ensuring our rules meet the applicable Clean Air Act requirements. So it's pretty complex. It takes a lot of time, but as Will said, we're more than willing to share our experience to help relieve any pain that you might have that we've already gone through.
Definitely.
Thank you, Alex, for arranging for this presentation. And thank you both, Will and Gregory. And I don't know, Alex, if you want to mention what we're thinking about for next month.
Yeah, just real quick, next month, we're thinking of a presentation or a discussion, I guess, on crematories. So if you guys have anything you want to talk about with crematories, keep that in mind for next month. And I'll be sending that invite out hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Greg. And have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.